I'm sure you'll mention during your talk. So I'm intrigued to hear about this. Ultra running has not been on my agenda. I'm a never say never person, not sure it will ever go on, but you may be inspire me. So Hazel, over to you. Do you have slides or anything that you need help with or assistance, or are you just going to chat away?
No, I've got no slides. I've got stuff next to me that I might hold up, but I've got no slides.
Perfect. Let's do Peter, one I prepared earlier. Absolutely brilliant. So Hazel, over to you.
Okay. Well, I volunteered for this in a moment of madness, and I really still don't really know what I'm going to say. So we will see how this goes. Right. So I suppose I'll start with explaining what an ultra is. So basically, an ultra is anything that is further than a marathon. So basically, I'm one of those nutters that Kelly was talking about. So I've always been into running and walking, and I started running when I was at university, but only quite short. Well, I don't want to say short distances in comparison to what I do now. So, and then I found a magazine one day when I was on holiday in Cumbria, just, you know, the ones that leave in the house. And it had mentioned in it a race called the Dragonback, which is basically the coast of Wales over several days. And it's a very long race. You only hold it once every other year. It's quite a big deal. And I decided I want to do that. I've not done it yet. I'll just add that in just quickly. But so that was basically the inspiration. So I started getting into running further and further distances. And this was I'd say about 6 years ago, I probably started. So I built up to running what's called a baby ultra. And a baby ultra is 50k. So that's about 32 miles. So that was my distance. I was doing that on a fairly regular basis. But then in 2019, I decided that I was going to do something for charity. So I took up barefoot running. So I was going to do a marathon barefoot. And it ended up that running barefoot is very difficult, completely different to running an ultra. So my distances fell through the floor. And that's when I joined Anna on her barefoot. I joined her at Ilkley up to Leeds. I had to drop out though, because I may have broken my toe while I was with her. I'm not sure she knows that. But yeah, I broke my big toe while I was on the run with her. So yeah, so I was doing barefoot running for a year up to a marathon distance. And that completely basically destroyed my ultra running. Because when you're running a marathon, it's very different to being an ultra. A marathon is more about you've got to be relatively relatively quick.
Doing?
Got people talking.
Good. Do I stop?
Because in a marathon, you've got quite strict cut-offs. I'm going to take that off. I'm too close to the fire. Right. In a marathon, you've got quite strict cut-offs. So it is quite a lot about speed, and it's also an awful lot of road running, which is something I'd never done before. So basically, my ultra running fell apart, just disappeared, gone. And I did my marathon in October 2019, the Yorkshire Marathon, and I injured my foot quite badly during it. So I had to stop running completely. So that wasn't great. And then lockdown happened at the beginning of 2020. And I lost my job. I still haven't got a job, which obviously gave me an awful lot of time. And I took running back up. And I started at about half marathons, which was something I was still comfortable with at that time. And then slowly started building up and up and up because I had nothing better to do. And during lockdown, at this point, I've now done multiple 100Ks and, as you can see on my t-shirt, a 100 miler. That took 23 hours, 20 minutes, I think it took. It was long. I was hallucinating at the end. It was great fun. Right, so now I've explained what an ultra is, but the main question I always get is why. Oh, so I got the cat meowing at me. So I'm not really sure why, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm fairly sure it's not just I'm mental. But I hate marathons, which sounds weird when I say I run further than a marathon, but I cannot stand marathons. There's so much pressure. They're a horrible thing. But an ultra is completely different. An ultra is more about a mindset. It's not so much about the actual run. Well, obviously you've got to run, but it doesn't matter if you walk. It doesn't matter what your pace is. It doesn't matter it's less pressure. There is so little pressure involved. You're just aiming for the end. You're racing against yourself. And ultra runners are seriously the most, I can't think of the word, the most supportive people I've ever met. Like genuinely, I've met so many in the last few years, and they are amazing. They really are. Most of them will be perfectly willing to sacrifice their own race in order to help you. It's brilliant. So to be honest, because of COVID, it's all been a bit strange the last couple of years. So I should have done some ultra races, and I will be able to tell you a bit more about them. So I was meant to do Lakes and Dare last year, which is a 50-mile run with 6 mountains in it, where you start at the top of Cumbria, run down to the bottom. Got a 24-hour time limit for that. And I should have been doing the Spine the other week. So I did that virtually, and I finished that the other day. The Spine is 268 miles. I did that in 11 days while also doing other stuff. I'd aim to do it much faster in the real thing, because obviously I wouldn't have to like look after the house. I just be there, I don't have to run. And I'm currently training to do a world record attempt in 2023, where I'm going to aim to break the Lajog world record. So I'll be running 70 miles a day for about 11 days, which to most people sounds mad. And I probably won't be able to manage it. We'll have to see. But so yeah, most people, when they talk about ultras, they talk about the food, because apparently it's a big picnic with some running involved, which I will admit it kind of is. So because of that, I have a pile of food next to me in case people ask questions about it. So I'll just explain some of my go-to ones, because I've already seen in the chat some people have already asked about that, so we'll go for it. So a lot of people like what's it called? Trailwind. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of it, but everyone loves that. I hate it. It makes me vomit because apparently my intestines are just awkward. So my go-to ones are Active Root and Kendall Mint. Active Root has got ginger in it, and I've discovered that once I get to about 60 miles, my digestive system completely shuts down. Nothing will go in. Everything I eat or drink just comes straight back up. Apart from Active Root, so that's why that's one of my go-to things. I really should have planned what I was going to say. You know, this is silly. You wouldn't think I used to be a teacher, would you? But anyway. So yeah, that's one of the things you've got to think about with ultra running, is you're always going to be at a deficit. It's physically impossible to get enough calories into your body because your body cannot actually absorb enough. I can't remember what the limit is off the top of my head, but there's a limit to how much your body can actually absorb. So, I can't let you out right now. So that's why you've got to essentially preload beforehand, and you also want to eat all the stuff in the world the next day. It's ridiculous. The other thing that's quite important if you want to take up long distances is a race vest. Now, I've got a Salomon one here because I got it off eBay. But one of the things that I'd massively recommend to all of you people, if you want to get a race vest, is to go into a shop, because an awful lot of race vests are not aimed at women. They forget about the fact we've got boobs. And if you get a men one, or if you get one that you haven't tried on beforehand, I can guarantee your boobs will get in the way. The other thing is that you want a flask that's flexible, because if you get one hard flasks, once again, your boobs get in the way. It's not a good situation. They really don't think about women in these situations. It's very difficult to get kits that's not aimed at men and just be slightly adapted. Same thing goes for shoes, to be honest. Most of the ones that are any good are actually aimed at men. So a lot of women that I know, they find them too wide, or they just don't fit properly in one way or another. It's not good. The other thing is, especially if you're doing multiple days, which I haven't done much of yet, I'll admit, but I'm working my way into, is when you look at recovery. So if anyone, I'm sure people have heard of ice baths. Ice baths are horrible, but the thing about an ice bath is that it sort of prevents your body from going into recovery mode. So therefore you don't get DOMS. You can't do this indefinitely. Eventually you will have to let your body recover. But if you go in an ice bath, or as my preference is, jump in a lake at the end of a long run, you'll find it hurt less the next day. The other thing that I find helps is this. It's got protein and carbohydrates in, which means you can absorb it better. And I've found since I started using that muscle pain the next day is a hell of a lot less, which means that I can go again. And yeah, I'm sure people are wondering why you're wanting to. Why are you wanting to spend your entire day running along and then making yourself end up vomiting because you can't absorb? I don't know. Okay, I can't really say exactly why. I think I like to know what the limits of the human body is. I find the human body fascinating, and I find what our limits are equally fascinating. And I like to push the limits. I like to see how far I can get. And I love to see how far other people can get. And that's another interesting thing, is I honestly believe that anyone can do an ultra. I don't believe anyone can do a marathon because of the time limits and such. I mean, most people probably could if they can train and everything. But an ultra is more about not stopping. And I honestly think that pretty much anyone can do it, even if you have to walk most of it. I've seen a lot of people over the last year who thought they'd never be able to go beyond a marathon managed to, just by being encouraged in the correct way. Obviously, the main issue for most of us is time. I've been very lucky that lockdown happened, which allowed me to get back into it. Because before that, it was a juggle. I will admit, trying to juggle it around having a full-time job is very, very difficult. People do manage it though. I can't remember her name, but there was a woman who won the Spine a couple of years ago, and she is a full-time vet. So it's doable. I have absolutely no idea how, but it is doable to do. And yes, Jasmine Paris, well done, thank you. I couldn't remember her name, but I've not met her. I'd love to meet her. So yeah, I can't remember what I'm going to say. Oh, another thing that's very important if you decide to take on any sort of long distance running is, and this is, I hate doing this, I really do, but strength training is like really important. The likelihood is that you might get an injury. Well, a lot of people will get injuries. As Kelly was saying, she got injured when she did her, I think it was 75 in a month. It is something that happens. I've had quite a few injuries, but the thing that I found most that prevents injuries is mixing in strength training and mixing in cross training and finding the right strength training. I've got a dodgy Achilles in my left ankle. It's not great. It goes quite often. And I've got all sorts of exercises that I have to do for it. And if I don't do it, I will basically have to stop running. And if I stop running, I'm not a nice person. Part of the reason I run is for my mental health. When I've had to stop running in the past, it doesn't go down well. I keep getting distracted by the chat. I'm going to close it. There we go.
So many lovely questions. So if you feel you want those to support you, because they're coming and coming. So if they're distracting you because you want to answer them, we're happy to throw some at you if you feel that's.
Yeah, go on. I keep seeing, thinking, oh, I can mention, and then think, oh no, but I'll just be throwing off into a different direction. I'm not very good at this, it turns out.
You are brilliant at this, because I have never seen so many questions, and all of these we've done, they're just coming and coming. So it's how you feel. Do you feel you want to share some more yourself, or would you like some questions?
I'm fine with going on to questions. That might give me some direction.
Amazing. As I said, I am not a runner. It's not something I've ever thought about. And I suppose just start off with, I'm in awe of you. Just your self-drive to be able to keep going. And I suppose that's what I was thinking about. Do you chat to yourself as you're running? Are you someone who listens to podcasts, music, or are you just in the moment? You know, what type of runner are you? Do you need that stimulus, or are you actually just in the zone, just running?
It depends what mood I'm in, to be honest. Like, if I'm on the treadmill, I will probably have Netflix on because I hate the treadmill. If I'm only going maybe up to a half marathon, I'll normally be listening to an audiobook or podcast, or sometimes some music. Problem is, once you go into the higher distances, the batteries just aren't going to last. So you pretty much have to train yourself to not rely on it. So I'll have something with me, and now and again I'll put it on if I'm flagging a bit. But you can't keep it on the full time because the battery will die. And towards the end, you're hallucinating, so you're only talking to someone who's not there. It's brilliant.
Well, that was one of the questions someone said, and Caroline and Nicola, I'm going to ask you to throw some questions out in a moment, but I noticed hallucinations, and someone asked the question, do you just work through the hallucinations? How do you deal with that?
The first time it happens, it's scary, I'll admit. But after you've had it a few times, you just you kind of know what they are. I mean, I've heard of some stories of some people who've had some quite terrifying. I've been quite lucky, none of mine have been that bad, but I've heard stories of people who have some very scary sounding ones. Mine are normally just weird. But because I now know what they are, I can just work past it. But the first few times was a bit scary, yeah.
Wow, I can't imagine exercising enough to get to a hallucinating state. So yes, it's even that has got me completely in awe of you. Nicola, Caroline, what are some of these many questions? Are there general themes you're seeing in the questions that are coming out?
Yeah, mostly logistics. There is a really good one from Astrid about when you start, like what time of day do you start a 24, and a lot of questions about how you plan your food, what you eat, and also food drops. Do you have a team that help you with that, or do you carry it?
Well, the endure one that I did was a 5-mile loop. So my house was the aid station, and it started because the official event started at 10 o'clock. It started at 10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock in the morning through to 10 o'clock the next morning. So I finished at about 9:20 the next morning. And then I did another one over New Year, was another 24 hour. I didn't manage 100 miles that time. I managed 77-ish. And that one, if I'm honest, I cheated a little bit. And once it got dark, I moved onto the treadmill because it got icy and I got a bit worried I was going to fall over. So that was a bit easier because I'm in my house.
That's amazing. And there is another question about your weekly training. Like, how do you plan your training? What does your weekly training look like?
At the moment, it's a bit all over because at the moment I don't have a job. So at the moment, I'm pretty much spending 8 hours a day outside running or walking. When I've got a job, though, it's a bit more complicated. So my main method was that I'd go before work for maybe a 10K, go to work. Then after work, I'd go over to, I live quite near the Yorkshire Wolds. So I'd go to the Wolds after work and do some hill training. Then I'd come home and then I'd go on the treadmill for an hour or two to supplement the hill training. And then at the weekend, on the Saturdays, my long run day. So Saturdays, I'd normally get at least a marathon out most weeks.
Wow, that's impressive, and lots of variety as well for you. Caroline, were there any others that jumped out at you? I'm just trying to look at all the pictures I took of the questions as they ran through.
Somebody was saying, what do you think about when it gets tough to motivate you to keep you going?
Oh, that varies. It varies on because sure everyone knows sometimes you're just not in the mood. Sometimes it's just a bad day and you just getting out is difficult. But I've got a few mantras. I won't admit some of them because I know there's children around, but I swear at myself a lot, which is not advisable, but it happens. But no, a lot of it is there's a lot of races I want to do, and I will basically make myself accept that if I don't do these training runs, I will never do those races. So it's focusing on the end goal, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. But sometimes nothing works. Sometimes it's just a bad day. You just want to go home, and and out and back works quite well on that because once you get out there, you've got to run to get back.
And how about sleep? Do you sleep a lot more deliberately, or do you just end up sleeping more?
I don't sleep well anyway. I'm not sure why that is. It's possibly because I'm on the autism spectrum, and people on the autism spectrum, from my understanding, don't sleep as much as everyone else, but I can easily get away with 4 hours a night. It doesn't affect me all that much. Then every now and again I'll sleep a bit more. So I'm probably a bad one to answer that question, if I'm honest, because you're meant to get 8 hours, aren't you? And I never get that.
I've got one here. What's your favorite piece of kit?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm not sure. Probably my race vest, to be honest, because it's just so useful for everything. You can carry a surprising amount in it. I can have food in it, drinks in it, not a full change of clothes, but a fairly decent change of clothes in it. So that's pretty good. But for treadmill's pretty good as well because that's just so useful. So many times that you can't bother to go out, but going on the treadmill's acceptable. Yeah, that's a difficult one. That I'm not really sure. I'm not a big kit person. I don't own as much as a lot of runners do. Can't afford it.
What scares you most about it all, or when you're out running?
Well, the thing that when they're in the whole running thing in general, the thing that mainly scares me is an injury because I hate the idea of having to take time off. I am not good at taking time off. Absolutely detest it. But Up until recently, my biggest fear was probably getting lost. I'm not bad at navigation, but when you're trying to navigate, when you're tired, it becomes a whole different ball game, especially if it's also dark or bad weather. So I've been doing a few navigation courses to try to help with that because I really don't want to get lost. It'd be embarrassing.
Someone just said, do you use gels or proper food, I guess?
I mainly use proper food, but I do have some gels. Just 1 second. My house is just covered in stuff. So I do mainly use real food, but I normally carry some gels with me just in case. But because my stomach's stupid and so many things it will just not accept, these are the only ones that I normally use, which are Kendall mint cake ones. I don't know why, but my stomach seems to like them, and I like mint. But I know a lot of people like cis ones, but they don't really agree with me that well, and I can't stand the active root ones. Not the active root, the high five ones. I can't stand the taste of them. But yeah, I'm generally speaking, I just go with real food if I can, but they're good for emergencies.
And there's someone in the comments here that says, have you tried baby food pouches?
I haven't, no. I've got a few friends who swear by them, but I've not tried them myself. It sounds a bit icky to me. But I know a few ultra runners do swear by them, but I've not tried them myself.
Oh, and one other question from the chat as well is from Ivy. What is your favorite color?
It's random. Either purple or red.
Here, Hazel, Ivy, I saw her face when her question was asked. She looks very excited. She's mini queens on ours, and I think Avy's just interested in what colours you like.
Fair enough. Purple and red are my two favourite colours. I couldn't say which one's more favoured than the other. It depends on the situation.
Ivy, I'm very impressed you asked a question. I think it's very brave and bold in this room of there's lots of people here. So go you, Ivy, for asking a question.
You just caught me off guard, sorry.
Want to hear about trainers? Do you stick to a certain brand? And while you're on that, you could do socks as well?
Well, I used to be a barefoot runner, so I think I feel an awful lot of trainers is a bit of a con. I shouldn't say that. But most of my trainers are road-wise, I like Brooks. And trail-wise, I've mainly got Salomons, but I do have a pair of Carrymore. And I know a lot of people don't like Carrymore, but my Carrymore I've done the entire Cumbrian way and been absolutely fine. So maybe I got lucky, I don't know. And socks, I mainly have Hillies, but I recently been exploring a new brand called Versus, which have got some fun designs, and I'm liking them at the moment. They're quite expensive, and they've only just launched in the UK, but I'm liking them. Otherwise, Hillies or the cheap ones from Aldi, because I go through socks a lot, so quite a lot, so I don't want to spend too much money on them.
Hazel, can I ask about, you touched on about sort of how it supports your mental well-being, and you also mentioned about having a diagnosis on the spectrum. When you've done a run, how do you see that shift your mindset? How do you feel running really is supportive of those parts of you?
I saw an image recently, quite a good one, where it was basically it was like a tangled load of thread, and then there was it coming out in thin line, and that's kind of how it feels. It's like before I go, there's all this stuff in my head, and then afterwards it's almost like it makes more sense. It's very hard to explain, if I'm honest, but yeah, I've got an anxiety disorder, and if I'm really anxious, or if I'm particularly annoyed about something that's happened, or if I'm overthinking something, I find if I go for a run, it almost gives my brain time to work through it properly. So afterwards, I won't be feeling as bad. If
And
that
do you
makes
have to
any
do
sense.
quite a long run for that to happen? Or because sometimes they say, especially during lockdown, even if you go out for 5 minutes, it shifts your mindset. For you, because you are an ultra runner, would a 2-mile run fix it, or do you need to almost do a minimum of quite a long run to get you, or does it really just depend where your mind is at?
It pretty much depends. I mean, anything's better than nothing. But as a general rule, I've got to be running at least 6 miles before my body remembers how to run half the time. So yeah, but anything's better than nothing.
I think it's great you found running, because that's a really supportive, healthy way of working through things when and especially as you were saying at the moment, not working, you found something to do to keep you moving, keep you healthy, keep your mind healthy. So I think it's great that but I just don't know how you keep going for that long. Do you ever get, like, I always think of like Forrest Gump in that film when he runs and runs and one day he just goes, I'm done, and he stops. Do you ever on a run go, do you know what? I know I said I was going to do 80 today, 80K, but do you know I'm at 50, I'm stopping, I'm just done. Or are you of the mindset, if I said 80, I'm going to keep going to 80?
That varies. There have been a couple of occasions where I have got to a point where I've just rung the boyfriend and got him to come get me. But usually I can keep going on the basis that I don't want to have to get him to come and get me. I'd feel like I was being a burden or something. It's not a healthy way of convincing myself to keep going, but it works. So, but yeah, there have been times when it's just like, no, just not going any further. No, legs say no.
Do you find that on an ultra run, there's a lot of people who are only walking?
Yeah, you get because quite usually the cut-offs are quite generous, so you do quite often get a lot of walkers or a lot of run walkers or Jeffers, I think they're called. Except, I mean, I walk up the hills anyway. Most of us do, apart from the proper crazies. So yeah, you've had quite a few walkers. Basically, you just got to look at the cut-off times and make sure they're generous enough. But they generally are in ultras in comparison to like marathons.
And somebody asked here as well. I'm sort of slightly distracted. You might have answered this. Do you have any thoughts on long socks versus short socks? Can't say that.
I assume by short socks you mean the ones that like disappear inside your trainer.
Well, I think more like the calf covering socks, I guess.
Oh, the really long one. Oh, I'm not a great fan of the really long ones myself. That's just because I find them uncomfortable. I know a lot of people like them. I don't like the feel of them. It's probably just me being awkward. So I normally go for the ones that are just like a little bit above your ankle. I don't like the ones that disappear inside your shoe either because I find I get blisters with them. But yeah, I don't like the feel of the long ones.
Sorry, socks are obviously a big deal here because somebody else says, do you use waterproof socks?
I used to, but I'm not a great fan of them, to be honest. I find that, I mean, I've never tried the really, really expensive ones, so maybe they're fine. But ones that I've had, they just sort of make my foot sweat. So it's like, well, my foot's getting wet anyway, so that defeats the object.
Yeah, I've always found that with them, yeah.
Hazel, can I ask a little bit about when you went running with Anna? Because obviously Anna is one of our people who set up the Adventure Queens. How was that? Because obviously she was doing a massive ultra because hers was days and days and days and days. How was that as an experience for you?
I feel bad about my experience there because I got really shy. I didn't have confidence to ask for a selfie with her. I didn't even get a hug because I got all panicked. I would like to have that day again.
I'm sure once the baby's a little bit older, she's going to be out doing something again. I think.
I'm sure she will be. Yeah.
And we can build up to that one. You can build up the confidence. You can run 100 miles. You can build up the confidence. I'm sure we can support you to have a selfie with Anna.
It was quite embarrassing that day because I turned up with no shoes on because I was doing the barefoot running thing, and I had pink hair, and I was sort of thinking, "Oh God, she'll think I'm copying her."
I think she'd be flattered, personally. Because there were quite a lot of people who joined along the way with that journey. So, because it sounds like you run quite a lot on your own, and I was just thinking from that point of view, running with someone else, was that something that you liked, or actually do you think you do prefer that running space on your own?
I prefer running on my own, to be honest, because I can go at my own pace.
Yeah.
And running with other people is nice every now and again, but I always feel a bit stressed about keeping the right pace with them or whatever. But then on the other hand, I'm training to be a run coach, so I need to get over that, don't I?
Yeah, because I'm the opposite. When I'm on my own, I think I get the grump, or when I have done running, or I'm a bit like, oh, just not motivated and stop. Whereas if I'm with others, they almost spur me on. And I actually found when I did do some races quite a long time ago, I found being in that pack mentality supported. But it seems that runners do seem to fall into two camps. And I wondered if more of the ultra style of running was more about, I'm on my own. I might do a race with people, but actually I quite like my sort of solo journey through it.
The thing about ultra running as well is, even at the races, you spend, well, unless you're purposely running with other people, at a race you'll spend at least 80% of the time pretty much on your own anyway. So I guess it's something you have to get used to.
Yes, gosh. But yeah, it's just such a long distance. I walked the marathon once and thought that was long, so let alone doing these hundreds. And when it goes beyond even hundreds, it seems quite in awe. And just see if there's any more questions that have come up along the way. But as you can see, your talk has really inspired people. It sounds like in this group there's quite a few people who are interested in ultra running, are runners. And there's a couple of people, someone earlier on said, oh, maybe this is making me think, am I going to do one? So you've obviously inspired quite a few people here, Hazel. So any final questions for Hazel before we let her go?
There's one here about negativity. If you think you don't have enough endurance. So when you just, yeah, so when you think that you don't have the endurance, or when you start building endurance, how do you get over that and keep going, I guess, keep improving your endurance?
That's a difficult one. I suppose it depends on the person. So some people might need external encouragement, whereas other people might be able to just power through it. I find quite often a lot of it's about knowing when you need to take a rest or listening to your own body. So you might have a bad day and you think, oh, I can't do this, never going out running again. But sometimes all you need is a day off. It's just your body telling you need to rest, essentially. Or sometimes you've got to know when to put it. An awful lot of it's trial and error. You've just got to learn what your own body and mind reacts to correctly. And that's what most of ultra running is, to be honest. It's learning how your own body and mind works and what it reacts to. It's a long process, unfortunately. There's no quick fixes.
Well, there's a question here then that's connected to that. Let me just reread it. So how does your mindset differ if you're doing a marathon versus the initial marathon portion of an ultra?
Well, as I say, I hate marathons. Can't stand marathons. I've done a couple, but I've mainly done them for charity because I wouldn't pick to do one. I think my main issue with marathons is you do feel under more pressure, because usually a marathon's got a cut off of maybe 5 hours. I can't run a marathon in 5 hours. Well, I can maybe, but I'll collapse at the end. I'm not fast. I never will be fast. I never have been fast. But the first marathon portion of an ultra, you've probably got at least 7 hours to get there. So I don't feel as pressured and as scared about it. So I think that's why I enjoy them more. It's acceptable to walk. It's acceptable to stop and take pictures. It's acceptable to have a little bit of a chat. You're not just going all out the whole way. I know it sounds ridiculous when some people run marathons in just over 2 hours, but I'm not fast. I never will be fast. I've accepted it.
So just out of interest then, if you're how fast are you running? So the first marathon portion of an ultra, how fast would you do that?
My ultra speed is between 12 to 14 minutes a mile, so not fast. I can just about do a 10-minute mile for 1 mile, and then I will fall on the floor. I'm not quick. I fully admit that.
It sounds like almost ultras in a weird way are more about the journey, not the destination, because obviously marathons, most people are doing them about time, and I'm sure there is a time element for ultras, but it sounds like it's more about the journey. It's more about, I'm not pressured about time so much. It's I'm just doing this and I'm going to get to the end, and then the time is important, but maybe not quite as it is with a marathon then for you.
Yeah, pretty much. In fact, that's what I found for most ultra runners that I've met. And until you get to the ones who are aiming to win, which the vast majority of us are never going to do that. But other than those people, it's about getting round. It's about accomplishing the thing that the vast majority of people think is impossible. It's not impossible, but people think they've got this mindset that it is. So it's brilliant to feel like you're doing something that other people you can't.
Well, Carrie's just put here, I love your attitude around finishing rather than being fast. The pressures to race is just so off-putting for a lot of people. So it's good to hear that there's another way, which you'd probably think ultras people think of as, but actually it sounds like the pressure's off a little bit. It's got a different vibe. It's just further, but it's not the pressure and stress, which I'm, it's why it's such a pleasure having you come speak, because it's a new mindset I wouldn't have even really thought about, because I just think as ultras people who want to do marathons but just for longer, but it doesn't seem like that's what it's about. So that's what's so interesting. And
it's a completely different way of running.
Yeah.
It's so difficult. When a lot of people I've met who do marathons and want to do ultras, the hardest thing they find is learning things like it's acceptable to walk, or it's acceptable to have a break and stuff. Getting that that mindset shift is so difficult for so many people, but I prefer it.
It's so lovely that people are running here is just saying that you're inspiring me. I'm a slow runner of thoughts that I had to get fast to do ultras, and it was Fiona going, thank you for inspiring me, because I think, like myself, that's the mindset most people have about it, which is great. There was another lady, Emma's like, when you become a run coach, come to Norfolk and lead a trail. So inspiring people to get going, which is fabulous. We just were asking if there's any final questions.
Just on a lighter note, then, have you had any hallucinations that you're happy to share with us? It might not be a lighter note, of course, but
let's see, what have I had? The most common one I have, and this is really random, I don't understand where this comes from, is I hallucinate that the entire floor is covered in dead bees. That, I don't know where that comes from. That's some sort of I don't know, sight view into my psyche. But yeah, I'll think that I'll think there's people watching me when there isn't anyone there. But that's more the feeling than an actual. But I've met people who've had ones where they've thought someone was running with them and had full conversations, and they've got to a checkpoint and they're like, "Well, where's the other person?" And the checkpoint people are like, "What other person?" But yeah, my main one is dead bees. I don't know why.
I think there's probably no rhyme or reason about hallucinations. That's why they're hallucinations, aren't they? Indeed. I'm wondering, Hazel, if you're open to people, because you really, just reading this, the amount of people are saying, thank you for inspiring me, and people are saying, I might have a go, which just, I'm in awe of you people. If people did want to ask questions, are you happy if people were to contact you through social media?
Yeah, fair enough. I'm mainly on Instagram. I don't really use Facebook all that much, apart from like I go on Facebook for my run group, and that's about it.
Okay.
But Ambitious Failure on Instagram.
Ambitious Failure. I like it.
Oxymoron.
Absolutely. I can't see on any layers you're failing at all, Hazel. It's just beyond amazing what you're doing.
My whole thing is that failure isn't something that's bad. It's something you can learn from. So my entire aim is to encourage people not to fear failure, basically, because it's not bad. It's just a learning opportunity.
Well, if that's your mindset as a coach, you're going to do very well. For lots of people, that's something they need to learn. So that is absolutely amazing. Well, I think it's just, if you go back through the chat afterwards, Hazel, you will see there's a lot of love for you out there. There's a lot of just, everyone's really loved what you've shared. And I personally like your show and tell style, the little bit of the, because I think it's great to see a visual, and the fact that as a woman who has boobs that, you know, are larger than some people's, the fact that you've talked about kit, because I think it is, those types of things are important. We're a women's group, those are the types of things that are needing to be talked about more and more. And you never know, you might end up designing some kit for women at some point. That could be a future job for you. Instead of joining furniture and metal together, you could be designing some type of furniture gear. But absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Hazel, for coming. And I just really want to thank you for putting yourself forward. I didn't come and find you. You said, I'm here, can I speak? So just thank you so much for it, because it's obvious, something that's really inspired the whole group. So thank you so much, Hazel.
Yeah, if I ever do it again, I'll be more organised.
Well, your style is great, because I think you come across with your enthusiasm, you're open to questions, and people can ask what they want. So I think scripted and knowing what to say all the time is not always the best way. So what you've brought has been brilliant. You can tell from the comments, there are so many comments. Lots of, I love it. And now I'm going to have to do an ultra, Emma Penfold has said.
Well, that's the one thing. If anyone is interested in doing ultra, I would strongly recommend, it's expensive, but I strongly recommend one of the Race to the Stones or Race to the Castle one as your first one, because you can do it over 2 days. So you can do 2 50k days and you can walk it rather than doing 100k in all one go. And it's very supportive, and their aid stations are awesome.
That's great to know, because if you're going from a marathon to an ultra, that's quite a leap for some people. So to have one which is a safe one and someone has done before with good recommendations, it's like staying in a hotel. You know, if someone's got a good recommendation, you want to go. So thank you for that. I just want to pick up, Ivy, you mentioned that Storm the baby was very cute earlier on, and I agree with you, Ivy. Storm, Anna's new baby, is very cute indeed. And I am very interested in what becomes of her as a mini adventurer with parents like Anna and Amy as her parents. So it's nearly 7:15. So we are going to go into another one of our fire pit times. We're not going to put up an image this time.